Hey, welcome. So today, we're going to tackle one of philosophy's biggest and, let's be real, most intimidating ideas, existentialism. But don't worry, we are going to break it all down into something clear, powerful, and actually useful for how you think about your own life. All right, let's just dive right in.
You know, it really all boils down to this one huge question. If there's no pre-written script for our lives, no universal instruction manual handed to us at birth, then how on earth are we supposed to figure out what it all means? This is the core challenge that existentialism tries to face head-on.
Okay, so before we can even get to the answers, we really have to understand the problem. Existentialism didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was a direct response to a massive shift in how we see the world, a genuine crisis of meaning. When the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche famously said, "God is dead," he wasn't just talking about religion. What he was really doing was diagnosing a major cultural earthquake. That single unifying source of value, of truth, of purpose that had basically anchored Western society for centuries, well, it was crumbling.
And when that anchor is gone, you're left with this terrifying void. Nietzsche had a name for it, nihilism. If there's no God, no cosmic plan, no external truth telling us how to live our lives, then our very existence is ungrounded. There's nothing, nihil, in Latin, right, to give it meaning. So that leaves us with the ultimate question. What do we do when we're staring into that nothingness?
Well, one of the most radical answers to this crisis came from the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. And his response is, well, it's both incredibly empowering and, honestly, a little bit terrifying. His idea? We are condemned to be free.
This right here is Sartre's most famous line. But what does it actually mean? Well, think about something like a paper knife. Someone had an idea for it, a purpose, its essence, its what it is for, long before it was ever actually made. Sartre says that for us humans, it's the complete opposite. We just show up. We exist first. There's no predefined purpose, no built-in essence. We have to create that for ourselves.
And this is where the real weight of that freedom hits you. For Sartre, you are nothing more than the sum of your actions, not your good intentions, not your amazing potential. You can't go around calling yourself a great writer if you haven't actually written the book. You are what you do, period. No excuses.
Now, because that level of responsibility is so heavy, so crushing, we are constantly tempted to run away from it. And Sartre had a name for this escape plan. He called it bad faith. It's what we do when we pretend we're not free, when we act like we're just objects being pushed around by our job or our personality or our circumstances.
Sartre gives this perfect example of a waiter he saw in a Paris cafe. The waiter's movements are just a little too sharp, his voice a little too eager. He isn't just being a waiter, he's playing the part of a waiter. He's hiding his own freedom behind a social script, letting the role tell him what to do instead of actually choosing his actions for himself.
Or think about his other example, a woman on a first date. At one point, her date takes her hand. Now, she has a choice, right? Accept the advance or pull her hand away. But instead of choosing, she just leaves her hand there. Lets it become this cold, lifeless object, pretending she's just a body and not a person who has to make a decision. She's trying to dodge her own freedom.
And that's really the core distinction for Sartre. Are we living in good faith, where we bravely accept our total freedom and responsibility, or are we living in bad faith, where we deny it and make excuses? Which brings us right back to his most powerful line. We are condemned to be free. Why condemned? Because we can't escape it. There's no off switch. Every single moment of every single day, we are choosing who we are. It's a constant burden for sure, but it is also our greatest power.
But hang on, is that the only way to look at it? Is our freedom that absolute? Well, Friedrich Nietzsche, the same guy who started this whole thing, he offered a totally different path. He saw us not as radical creators from nothing, but as artists of life.
Yeah, see, Nietzsche didn't really buy the idea that we just create ourselves out of thin air. He saw us more like sculptors who are given a block of marble. We didn't choose the marble, but our job is to creatively respond to what we've been given and make something meaningful out of it.
There's this amazing story that illustrates this idea perfectly. The jazz pianist Herbie Hancock was on stage with the legendary Miles Davis. The band was just on fire. And then, right in the middle of Miles' solo, Herbie plays a completely wrong chord, a total clunker. And he was just mortified, thinking he just ruined this perfect moment.
But Miles Davis, he didn't even flinch. He just paused for a split second, listened to that wrong chord, and then immediately started playing a melody that made Herbie's chords sound not just right, but absolutely perfect. like it was meant to be there all along. He didn't ignore the mistake. He absorbed it and transformed it into something beautiful. That, right there, is being an artist of life.
So this brings up a really important point, a kind of constraint on our freedom that actually ties both Sartre's and Nietzsche's ideas together. The thing is, we aren't born into some kind of blank void.
Another philosopher, Martin Heidegger, he called this thrownness. And it's a simple but incredibly profound idea. Every single one of us is thrown into a life, a time, and a place that we did not choose. We just kind of wake up and here we are.
I mean, just think about all the things you had zero say in. Your parents, the country you were born in, the historical moment you occupy, the language you speak, the culture that shapes you. In that jazz analogy, these are the notes you've been given. They aren't your choice, but they are the raw material you have to work with.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of big ideas. What's the takeaway here? Let's bring all this back down to earth and see what it actually means for you and me.
This really is the central tension, isn't it? Which camp do you fall into? Do you lean more towards Sartre's view that we are these radically free creators responsible for inventing ourselves from scratch? Or do you see yourself more like Nietzsche's artist, creatively responding to the life you've been given?
So you've really got two powerful ways to think about this. Sartre's radical freedom demands that we take absolute ownership, creating our own meaning out of nothing. Nietzsche's creative response asks us to be more like artists, to skillfully and beautifully transform the life we've been thrown into. One is about pure invention, the other is about masterful response.
But you know, in the end, maybe existentialism doesn't give you the answer. Maybe it does something even more important. It completely reframes the question. The goal isn't to go out into the world and find some hidden meaning like a treasure hunt. The goal is to accept the awesome, terrifying responsibility of creating that meaning for yourself. So ultimately, this is the question existentialism leaves us with. Life has dealt you a hand. It's given you a set of notes. Your circumstances, your history, your talents, your challenges. You can't change those notes. But the music you make with them, well, that's entirely up to you.